Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. As always, I just want to take a second here to thank you for being here. I know life is busy. I know you have probably a lot on your to-do list, and the fact that you're pausing to listen into this show means a lot. And I really hope you reap a ton of value from this episode. And I want to dive right into today's topic because I'm really excited about it. I always say that. Of course, I hope I'm excited about the topics I discuss. But the topic I want to discuss today is the importance of understanding your depth of commitment, specifically around your self-care, around your commitment to your health. Because I think this is a really important element of learning how to become more consistent with your behavior. And on that note, in our last episode, we talked all about consistency, partly because I was in mid-launch of our most popular program, which is called the Consistency Code, but also because I teach consistency. That's kind of my zone of genius. Those of you who are longtime listeners of the show, you know that I don't believe that women are lacking information when it comes to how to improve their health. That's not really the problem most women are facing, is not knowing what to do. The real challenge most women are facing is learning how to become more consistent with the application of what they already know. And I've had the great fortune of literally making a career out of helping women to become more consistent in their ability to show up for themselves. And when it comes to health in modern day culture, I really feel that we have a commitment issue. You will never learn to be consistent if you don't learn how to commit. Every time I get ready for a podcast episode, of course, I do research. And as I was getting ready for this episode, I came across a quote by this gentleman named Neil Strauss. I don't even know who he is, but the quote was really good. He said this, that without commitment, you cannot have depth of anything. And how true is that? Without commitment, you're never going to experience deep relationships with your kids, your spouse, your partner. Without commitment, maybe by stroke of luck, but in most cases, you're not going to have a deep relationship financially, because I believe finances are a relationship. Without commitment, you're probably not going to have so many rich experiences that you could have otherwise. Because where do we actually get so much value and find the gold in life experiences? It's in going through hardship. It's being faced with challenges and staying committed nonetheless. And on the other side of that staying committed, we come out of the challenge and we feel a new depth to that thing we're committed to. So we do commit to marriages, we commit to relationships, we commit to our careers, we commit to our pets, we commit to our retirement funds. I have no doubt, whoever you are listening to this episode today, there are things in your life that you are fiercely committed to. What are they? And think for a moment how your health would improve if you could commit to improving it with the same depth of commitment that you have to those things. I've worked with a lot of women over the years, and I have to say that there is a common thread with a lot of the people that I work with where they feel that they are consistently letting themselves down. They don't trust themselves, that they're going to show up for the things they put on their schedule in regards to themselves. And they are also kind of in a habit of always looking outside of themselves for what to do next. And the challenge in all of that is really the sort of the lack of commitment. Because when we commit, we don't let ourselves down because we're going to show up no matter what. When we commit, we actually learn how to trust ourselves. And when we commit to ourselves and we build that trust, we don't have to keep looking outside of ourselves for the answers. So what is the definition of commitment? Commitment is a promise or an agreement to do something in the future. And again, like I said, we often think about our commitments to others. So again, our partners, our kids, our friends, our jobs. As it relates to this conversation, I want you to really think about your commitment to yourself, your level of self-commitment. What are your promises? What are your agreements to yourself? It's not a question a lot of people consider. Now, in the space of health, the diet industry approaches improving health from the perspective of committing to an outcome, a weight goal, maybe something changes in your blood profile, maybe an aesthetic goal. And outcomes are not enough. It's not enough to be committed to an outcome because you could achieve that outcome, and then what? You have to commit to becoming the type of person who can create and maintain the outcomes you're seeking. The real power of generating different outcomes for your life is less about the actual outcome and more about who you had to become, who you had to transform into being to create that outcome. I mean, I think, again, most of us understand that the real value of setting goals is not the outcome. It's not the recognition or the reward. It's sold as that. But that's not really where the value is. The value is in who we become by digging deep into the discipline, the courage, and the commitment in order to achieve those things. So, in my opinion, to create meaningful change, not just change, but deep, meaningful change, you must become wildly curious about who you are and why you do what you do. You have to get very honest about what you're doing well and where you're falling short. And you must commit fiercely to changing the things that are misaligned with the woman that you say you want to be. Not just for bikini season, but for the long term. Because ladies, let's face it, like nobody wants to keep recycling the same process to keep achieving the same result because they can't sustain it. And in order to create lasting change, we have to focus more on who we're becoming and less on what we're getting. And one of the things I want to speak to, because I think it's really important to know, is, we see, and a lot of us have experienced, creating a certain outcome and then, reverting right back to where we started. And a big reason that happens is partly because we stop being consistent, partly because we aren't really committed. And also a part of that commitment element is that we haven't really changed what we believe about ourselves. And this is really, really important to understand because you could lose 50 pounds by following a protocol, right, that someone else wrote for you. So a meal plan, an exercise program, lots of people achieve weight goals by following those types of programs. But if you do not change the way you think about yourself along the way, and you continue to think that you're someone who can't sustain a weight goal, you're always going to be heavy, that you're lazy, you're not worthy, whatever that mental chatter is that you've been carrying with you for decades, if you don't change that, what will happen is you may achieve your outcome. But then because your thoughts, the way you're thinking is so radically different than the reality that you're experiencing, you will actually unravel your own good work in order to return back to where your reality matches up with your thought process. Because our brains do not like when our thinking is mismatched with our reality. What you think is what you will always create evidence for. And I think this is so important. Because again, changing behavior is not enough. You have to change the way you think about yourself in order to sustain whatever behavior changes you create for yourself. So, we need to focus on nurturing the relationships, or I should say relationship, it's singular, not plural, but we need to focus on nurturing the relationship that we have with ourselves. And the outcomes may be a byproduct of that. And I say may because it may not always turn out the way you expected it to. At the core, health is a relationship issue, even more than it's a hormonal issue or an energy equation issue. So hear me out on that. Because a lot of you have been listening to this podcast for a long time, and you know that I believe that, of course, hormonal balance is really important to health, and that how much energy we're consuming and how much energy we're expending is also a part of the health equation. But the more important question to ask and take responsibility for is, why are my hormones imbalanced? Right? Is it my inability to manage stress in certain areas of my life? Is it because of my lifestyle choices? Is it because I'm not really honoring what my body needs at this age and stage of life? Why do I make the food choices I make? Is it because I'm just reacting to life all the time? I'm never prepared. I'm never putting forethought into what I'm going to eat for the day. And so I'm very reactive around food, and I'm just making choices based on convenience? Or do I make the food choices I make because I'm really committed to nourishing my body? Why do I eat the amount of food I eat? Do I overconsume because I'm numbing my emotional landscape and I'm trying to avoid facing other areas of my life, and so I use food as a buffer? Do I undereat because I don't like who I am and I think my worthiness is wrapped up in how I look, and so I underconsume? Or do I really work to fuel my body to perform optimally? The intention behind why you do what you do is everything. And I've used these examples before, but I'll use them again. I know women who go to the gym and work out every single day, not because they're committed to improving their health, but because they literally don't believe they're worthy unless they look a certain way. I know women who order a salad for lunch, not because they're concerned about nourishing their body, not because they're committed to their health, but because they don't think they're lovable unless they look a certain way. So again, the intention behind why you do anything is everything. And I want you to start recognizing that your relationship with yourself is the most intimate and long-term relationship of your life. And to foster a healthy relationship with yourself, you must be able to trust yourself to follow through with the commitments you make to yourself. Because let's face it, one of the core tenets of any healthy relationship is commitment. So what are the commitments you're making to yourself when it comes to your health? Do those commitments feel in line with the woman you want to become? I want to give you some questions that I think are really worth asking yourself in order to better understand the depth of your commitment to improving your health and to your own self-care. And the first question I think you should consider is, how committed are you to getting to know yourself on an intimate level? Meaning, how interested are you in getting to know what you think about yourself, about the things that happen in your life? How much time are you spending understanding your emotional landscape? Here's why those questions are important to consider. I operate from the premise that your thoughts are what create your emotional landscape. Emotions don't just happen to you. Something happens in our life, we have a thought about it, and that's why we feel something. So it's really, really important to start understanding what we're thinking so we can start better understanding what we're feeling. And here's why that's so important. Your feelings are the very reason why you will show up or why you won't. It's what will cause you to take action or cause you to stay paralyzed. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions drive action. And of course, your actions or inactions are what create the results of your life. So how committed are you to getting to know yourself on that level? How committed are you to creating time to get to know yourself? We all know, right, when we're kind of forging a relationship with a new partner, we spend a lot of time with them because we need to get to know them and understand how they think and how they respond to challenges and who they are as people. But most women I work with very high achievers who are very busy, and they don't have time for themselves. So it makes sense that that relationship is suffering. I was talking to a client the other day, and I told her, I said, you need to start dating yourself. Like, what would it look like to date yourself? Because when we think about dating, we think about doing fun things, experiences that would help us to get to know the other person, just having adventures. And again, time is an issue for a lot of women because they don't create it. And then the second problem that comes up a lot is that a lot of women are like, Courtney, if I had free time for myself, I wouldn't even know what to do. Right. Because you're so detached from yourself. So the only way to remedy that is to start spending time with yourself. So what if you put a time in your calendar or multiple times in your calendar every week that was literally in dedication to getting to know yourself, dating yourself, if you will? How committed are you to rebuilding trust in yourself that you will do what you said you would do? And ladies, I really want you to hear this, right? A lot of us have just made a habit out of compromising and negotiating our way out of the things we say we're committed to when it comes to our own self-care. It's just a habit. And habits can be changed, right? That is the brilliance of the brain, that neuroplasticity of the brain. We can rewire our brains to create new behaviors, but it requires practice and it requires a willingness to get uncomfortable. Because like I tell a lot of my clients, often what we need to do to improve our health is the opposite of what we've been doing. And when we start doing the opposite of kind of our normal mode of operation, it's really uncomfortable. But it is a choice to look at that discomfort and think, oh, I shouldn't do this. It's uncomfortable. It's too hard, right? And if you think that, you're going to quit. You're not going to pursue it. You're not going to be consistent. Or you could choose to recognize that discomfort is a very necessary part of behavior change. And it actually is an indicator that you're doing the work. So how you think about discomfort is important, and it's very optional. You get to choose what you make discomfort mean. Are you making it mean that you should stop and that you're failing and that it's too hard? Or are you choosing to make it mean, I'm doing really important work? So to kind of wrap this up, I definitely want you to consider who you are committed to becoming. And something that one of my mentors has used in her own teachings with me, Brooke Castillo, is, would you give me $50,000 because you're that committed to becoming that version of yourself? And I love this question because it really makes you consider your level of commitment. Like, ooh, I don't know. Like, am I $50,000 committed to becoming that version of myself? And if the answer is no, I'm only like $25,000 committed or $5,000 committed, why is that? And literally write down your answers on a piece of paper. Why are you only that dollar amount committed? What's coming up for you? Are you afraid of failure? You don't trust yourself? Like, what are the things? It's really important to get to know your thoughts about what's preventing you from fully committing. Because when you can see what the obstacles are, you're in such a better position to create strategies for overcoming those obstacles. It was really interesting recently. I did a poll inside the Women of Grace and Grit Facebook community, which is a free community, by the way. Anyone can join it. If you enjoy the podcast and you want extra support, I strongly recommend it. You can just put in the search engine of Facebook, Women of Grace and Grit, and you'll find the group. But I recently put a poll up in that group asking people their level of commitment. And I use the analogy of swimming when I talk about commitment. A lot of people just want to have one toe dipped in the water, and that's not how you learn how to swim, right? We all know that to learn how to swim, you need to get completely wet. So I think the choices were, is your level of commitment a one-toe dip? Are you in knee level? Are you waist deep? Are you fully submerged, right? Are you fully committed? And the most popular answer was that I'm waist deep, right? I'm half in and I'm half out. So then I posed a follow-up question. Why is that? Why are you only partially committed? Why are you only half committed? And the answers were fascinating and really relevant. I think a lot of us can relate to all of these answers. The first answer was overwhelm, right? That's one of the answers that I came across first. And I just want to remind you, listening, that overwhelm is always an option, right? And overwhelm, the feeling of overwhelm, will never produce anything helpful in your life. It never will cause you or inspire you to take action. Overwhelm causes the opposite. It will paralyze you. It will keep you in a spin cycle of feeling overwhelmed, so you can't possibly take action. So instead of allowing yourself to feel overwhelmed, I always encourage my clients to ask really good questions. Why are you feeling overwhelmed? Get really specific about why you feel overwhelmed. I have all of these things to do. Okay, what's your plan for getting those things done specifically? What do you need to say no to? Where could you actually ask for help? You start finding strategies for your overwhelm. Another reason that a lot of women said they were only waist deep is because of decision fatigue. So what would happen is they would come home from work at the end of the day or later in the afternoon somewhere, even though they had the best of intentions for how they were going to take care of themselves in the day, they found themselves compromising and rationalizing later in the day. Totally normal, so common. Decision fatigue, my friends, is a very real thing. Your poor little brain can only handle making so many decisions in a day. So my question is, how easy are you making it to commit to yourself later in the hardest part of the day? How easy are you making it to follow through with your commitments at the time of day where you have the least amount of energy? So one of the things that comes to mind, right? This is so funny to me. I talk to my clients a lot about premeditating what they're going to eat for the day. And people are really good about premeditating breakfast and lunch, and they stop there. And I say it's funny because where do most people struggle the most with food? It's in the late afternoon and evening. So definitely planning, like being intentional about how you're going to eat all the way through your day. Premeditating all of your meals, not just through lunchtime. That's the easy part. Or even if you need to start with one meal, start with what you're going to eat later in the day, where you're more likely to binge or you're more likely to compromise your choices. Another reason that came up in the poll for people only being waist deep was just their belief about what's possible for their life. And I just want to remind you here and now that all a belief is a repeated thought. It's a thought you have thought so many times, it has now become a belief. And you can totally change your beliefs. But the only way you can change your beliefs is by thinking new thoughts. So this is why it's really important to get to know what your current beliefs are about what is possible for your life. Do you like those beliefs? Are they serving what you want for your life? If the answer is no, awesome, you get to change them. But remember, change only happens when we become aware and we make a conscious choice to think something different, which is a practice. And one other thing that I want to mention from that poll that came up was that the reason why some women are only waist deep in their commitments to themselves is because they are balancing a lot of other commitments in their life. So again, the partnerships, the jobs, the kids, the other passions and pursuits in their life. And I loved this answer, right? Because it's a very real thing. And this to me is the essence of self-leadership. It's deciding how much time and energy you are willing to dedicate to anything. And quite frankly, more commitment in one area of your life usually means that you're going to have to show up a little bit less in another area of your life. So let's just say that you're married, you've got a couple kids, you have a great career, you take pretty good care of yourself, and then you decide to go back to college and pursue your PhD. You're going to have to be flexible in your approach. It doesn't mean you can't commit to all those things. It means that commitment, you're going to have to be flexible within your commitment, right? And this is where a lot of women kind of fall into the all or nothing mentality, right? Well, I can't do it as perfectly or as well as I've always done it, so I'm just not going to do it at all. That doesn't need to happen. But flexibility within your approach to your commitment definitely needs to happen. The more commitments you add to your life. You can commit to a lot of things, but you have to extend yourself the grace to be flexible within your commitments. And the phrase I've used a lot in the past is that structured flexibility, right? That we commit to a structure, but then we're flexible within the structure so we can maintain our mental health. So at the end of the day, given all the commitments that you have on your plate, given the commitment that you have to becoming the type of woman you really want to be, I just want to ask you, are you at peace with your level of commitment to your own self-care right now? For some of you, that answer might be yes. Awesome. And for some of you, that answer might be no. And if the answer is no, okay, no reason to beat yourself up. But hopefully all the other questions that I gave you today will help you to get a little bit more clear on what it would take for you to up-level that commitment. I want to end with a quote by Paulo Coelho, who I adore. He's one of my favorite authors. And he says that freedom is not the absence of commitments, but the ability to choose and commit myself to what is best for me. And I love that so much because I think, especially based on what I was just talking about in terms of having a lot of commitments in your life and really choosing for yourself the depth of commitment that you have in each area is only something that you can decide. And the most important thing is that you are at peace with what you decide. All right, my friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope it was helpful. I always love hearing from you, Courtney@graceandgrit.com. And remember, if you are not currently a member of the Women of Grace and Grit Facebook community, but you want a little bit more support, you want a little bit more inspiration, that's a great place to get those things. So Women of Grace and Grit Facebook community. And I will see you again very soon. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.